Hey, are we?
We have somebody new.
Are we not going to see ourselves while we're doing this?
No,
That's
we don't
good
get to see
because
each
that's
other.
so unnerving. I think I have something in my teeth now. This is your ratios lessons. We're going to be covering 6.rp.1. By the end of this, you should be able to find the ratio of two quantities and represent it in multiple ways. So if you could not write as fast as I was reading, make sure you pause right here and get this all on your paper. Bloop.
All right, now we're ready to start with some definitions. So the first one is today's lesson is on ratios. A ratio is a comparison of two quantities using division. So a ratio might be 3 boys to 4 girls in a class, something like that. There are 3 different ways to write a ratio. You can write 2 to 3. You can use the word 2. A common way is in the middle with the colon, 2:3. What you're going to see most often is written as a fraction. A ratio of 2 to 3 written as 2/3. Like any good fraction, a ratio should always be written in simplest form, so you do have to simplify those. And two ratios are equal if they have the same simplest form. So if you simplify them both and they get the same thing, you know that they are equal to each other.
So here we have just an example of some hearts and stars. So what I'd like you to do is draw out all of these hearts and draw out all of these stars. And what then we're going to find is the ratio of hearts to stars and the ratio of stars to total shapes. So if you need to, pause, write them, then restart.
They don't have to be pretty hearts. They can be nice and ugly ones, but just nice and quick.
So what I would do, if I was starting with this, I would like to group them first. So let me get my little magic pen here. And when I'm counting, you could just group them in groups of 5. I can do this a little faster than that.
You're getting better at it.
There's a group of 5, and there's a group of 5. So I know that there's 10 hearts. You could also count them by numbering them. 1, 2, 3, so on. This is the number so on. Then you can group these in groups of 5 too. So here I've got 5 stars, and here are 3 stars. So when I come down here to answer my first question, I'm looking at what is the ratio of hearts to stars. What I know is I have 2 groups of 5, which makes 10. Then I have a group of 5 and a group of 8 stars, which gives me 8 stars. But is that in its simplest form? It's not in its simplest form, so they're both divisible by 2. They have a common factor of 2, which means I can then divide them both by 2 to get 5 to 4. Right? Yeah.
Okay.
So then the ratio then of stars, and probably for myself, I like to make sure I know what I'm doing. So I'm going to underline the 2 things I'm going to find. This was stars to hearts. And it even uses the language in the question, the word 2. So the number of stars then is 8. I figured that out already. And then total shapes. So if total shapes is the combination of both, so if I add them both together, that's 18. 8 plus 10. Simplest form demands that I make this into, I can divide them both by 2, 2, 2, giving me 4 to 9. So that would be 4 stars, stars to 9, and I'll abbreviate total shapes. So then, let me get up to my arrow button here. Bloop. No! That one.
There we go.
There we go.
All right, so we talked through basic ratios, but now we're going to talk about different forms of a ratio. So one is something called part to part. So go ahead and jot this table down, and we're going to fill in a quick definition and an example for each one of these. So a part to part. There we go. It means one part of the group is compared to another part of the group. So our example is along the bottom you'll see we have 3 red crayons, 4 blue crayons, and 8 green crayons in a box. So you're apparently in kindergarten. We want to know what is the ratio of red crayons to green crayons. Well, we have 3 red crayons, so 3 goes first. We have 8 green crayons, so 8 is our second number. The order of the numbers really does matter. A ratio of 8 to 3 is different than 3 to 8. So Mr. Romanovich is writing them in all 3 of its forms as a fraction with a colon or with the word 2 in between. In this case, 3/8 is already in simplest form, so that's as far as we need to go.
Then the second type is part to whole. So now one part of the group is compared to everything that's there. So an example here that we have that we're going to use this bottom portion is, what is the ratio of blue crayons to total crayons? And I check here and I know I'm looking for my blues. My blue crayons are 4. And then total means the sum of all of these. So 3 plus 4 is 7, plus 8 then is 15 Aruni, which can be written as a fraction or with your language arts skills. There you go.
And then always check, see if you can simplify it. Again, this one's already in simplest form, so we're good to go. Last one is whole to part, which is basically just the opposite of the one Mr. Romanovich just went over. You're going to take the ratio of the whole group to just one little part of it. So we want to know, what is the ratio of crayons in the box to the number of red crayons? Well, Mr. Romanovich already added them up. There are 15 total crayons. That's our numerator. Denominator is going to be 3. That's the number of red crayons. In this case, this one can be simplified. They can both be divided by 3. So we get a ratio of 5 to 1. Now, normally we would simplify that because it's an improper fraction, but in terms of ratios, we have to have both a numerator and denominator. So please don't simplify this down to just 5, because that needs to be the total number of crayons to the number of red crayons. We need 2 numbers there.
There we go. All right, so here we're going to work with a chart, and we're just going to answer some ratio questions based on this data over here. And the first question then asks us, what is the ratio of peppermint? Let's use a different, I'm tired of black. Let's use a different color. Oh no, here's the color thing. Let's use red. And we're looking for the ratio of peppermint to fruit. And for me, what I'm looking for is then I'm going to find my peppermints, find my fruits, bring my data up here. I can even align it with where I'm at in the problem. And it's 9 to 3. Once again, you see that there's a common factor that these two share, so we can put it into simplest form. If we divide them both by 3, we end up with 3 to 1. Remember to keep this because we need 2 quantities to compare. It can't just be 1. So we can always write that as 3 over. Marker. There you are. 3 over 1. And I'm sure you're a little bit better at drawing a horizontal line than I am.
All right, so now think about that one. Was that a part to part to whole, or whole to part? So in this case, we took a small little section, peppermint, and compared it to another small little section, fruit. So we would call this one a part to part ratio. So how about our next one? What is the ratio of total responses to the responses for cinnamon? So when we see total responses, that's a good indication we need to add them all up. And then we want to compare just the cinnamon. So we add them all up. 9 plus 8 is 17, plus 3 is 20, plus 1 is 21. So we have 21 total responses. That's going to be my numerator, my first number. Very delightful, 21.
There's a little
Then I'm
flair.
going to compare that to cinnamon. Well, in my table, cinnamon had 8 responses, so I have a ratio of 21 to 8. In this case, I can't simplify 21 to 8. There's no common factors. So I can go ahead and write it in all 3 of its forms. And then ask yourself, is this part to whole, or whole to part? Well, in this case, I started with the total number of responses. That's the whole amount. And then I compared it to just one little portion of it. So we would call this one whole to part.
Hoped.
If you are feeling comfortable with this, go ahead and do the last 2 on your own. If not, follow along with us as we finish them up.
The last one, or the second to last one here, ratio of spearmint to cinnamon. Spearmint to cinnamon. Sounds like it's going to be part to part. So spearmint then is just 1 there. Cinnamon is 8. Bring my 1 over. Then set up my fraction. It looks like a fraction, but it's a ratio. It's 1 piece of spearmint to 8 pieces of cinnamon. Write it 3 different ways. To 8. Is it simplifiable? Nope. So we're good to go. When we look at it, it is a part because it's spearmint, and we're comparing it to another part, which makes it a part-to-part ratio.
All right, last one. What is the ratio of fruit to the total number of responses? So if we look in our table, fruit had 3 responses. So that's my first number. In the second problem, we already calculated there are 21 total responses. So our ratio is 3 to 21. Quick check, 3 and 21 can both be divided by 3, so we can simplify, and we should get a ratio of 1 to 7. So one person responded with fruit out of every 7 people who responded. Again, since we're dealing with the total responses, we know we're dealing with the whole. So we started with fruit, that's just part of it, compared to the whole amount, the total responses. So this one is part to whole. We'll talk more about ratios when you get to class tomorrow.